Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. My name is Murray Rankin, and I am the MLA for Oak Bay Gordon Head. I'm grateful to be here today on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. I'm honored to be here in my official capacity representing Selina Robinson, the Minister of Post-Secondary Education and Future Skills. But I'm also delighted to be here as a past member of the University of Victoria faculty. I taught law at the University of Victoria for over a decade, and this feels like these people are my family. I want to say welcome and thank you for coming. I want to welcome the Premier David Eby, UVic President Kevin Hall, Amelia Illman, who is the Residence Education Community Leader in the French Living Learning Community in Snanaka Elung. I think I got that right? Snaka Elung House. We're all very excited about today's announcement. Our government is committed to making post-secondary education accessible and affordable for more British Columbians. And now I'd like to invite Premier David Eby to tell us more about today's announcement. Premier.
Thanks, Murray. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here today. It's a pleasure to be here on Lekwungen-speaking people territory, especially after this morning's events out front, with the Lekwungen language being formally incorporated into the grounds of the legislature as it should be. Thank you to Minister Rankin, thanks to Doug, thanks to Kathy. This announcement today about student housing is an important one. I think that those of us who have had the opportunity to live in student residence know that it is an important experience. It is part of learning to live on your own, away from home, in a safer environment. Often it's more affordable than market housing. Learning how to keep things, relatively clean. That it is a place to build lifelong friendships with colleagues and to really become an adult and then transition out, hopefully, into a professional career. And really build your life in this province. The challenge that we face, of course, in British Columbia is that if you'd like to have that experience, if you're able to move into student residence, the spaces fill up fast, or there's a wait list, and you're not able to get into this really important kind of housing. It means students are forced off campus, and that has implications for the broader community as well. All of a sudden, people who are looking for housing are competing with students from the local post-secondary institution in my community. It's the University of British Columbia. If there's not enough on-campus housing, it has an impact on people who are not students who are also looking for rental housing. When Kaylee and I were out for a date a little while ago, we were in Richmond, and our server was a UBC kinesiology student. And she lives in Richmond. Despite attending the University of British Columbia, she spends about an hour on transit each direction to go to and from her classes, which adds stress and cost to her overall experience, as well as, she'd love to live in residence, to build those friendships and have those experiences, but it wasn't available to her. There are many, many students in this situation across the province. Our government is building student housing at an unprecedented pace. In 2018, you'll recall, we committed to building 8,000 student beds in the 10-year period from 2018 to 2028. Today, 5 years later, we've nearly achieved that goal. More than 7,700 new beds are open, underway, and funded. And to put that in context, in 16 years of the previous administration, 130 beds were built. So for the visual learners in the crowd, got a little book display here, very appropriate student. So for every one unit that the previous government built in 16 years, we built 59 units of student housing. And this really captures why it's such a challenge for students today to find that housing. So we've got more to do. Now, we do know that there are people out there who think that the housing market should be managed in a way that ensures that no sector is oversupplied in a way that may cause developer profits to come down. We have a different perspective in our party. We believe that housing is a place to live, that housing is not a profit center or an investment portfolio builder. And that is why I'm pleased to share with you that our new goal for student housing is 12,000 beds instead of our original goal of 8,000 beds by 2028. In particular, I'm very proud to share with you that Sanaka House at the University of Victoria is now open. It's home to 385 students and was completed 1 year ahead of schedule. Congratulations to University of Victoria on that. Last year, we opened Chukni House, nearly 400 beds and a dining hall. The new residence increases the University of Victoria's student housing market by 25% and takes pressure off of the broader Victoria rental housing market. Now, this is just part of our overall work to make life more affordable for students, for people who are building their skills for the future. We waived tuition for former youth in care of all ages. We increased access to grants and financial assistance for students. We eliminated the interest on student loans. We invested in zero-cost textbooks. We made contraception free. Since 2020, more than 65,000 students have received access to the BC Access Grant, which provides up to $4,000 a year to help defray the cost of post-secondary. And we've also deployed the Future Ready Action Plan, which has tuition-free post-secondary courses for people in British Columbia. Building student housing is just one more way that we're creating more homes for people. We're building more rentals than ever before in this province. We put in place the speculation and vacancy tax recently announced, expanding to 13 additional communities. We've eliminated rental and age restrictions in stratas, opening up rental housing units that previously couldn't be rented. And we are restricting short-term rentals in Victoria and cities across the province, making sure that Airbnbs are out and people are in to these important housing units that they need. Students are definitely the future of our province. You know, young people in our province need to see a future for themselves here. Part of that for many people includes post-secondary education. Addressing those barriers to education is a critical way to ensure that our students are successful and that our province is successful as a whole for all British Columbians. Thank you to all the students. I wish you the best of luck on finals, and I hope you enjoy a well-deserved holiday break. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Premier Eby. I can tell you already as a representative of Oak Bay Gordon Head that the student housing is making a difference in community, freeing up other locations that otherwise would be taken by students in Fernwood, in Saanich, and Victoria. It's definitely made a difference and will continue to make a difference. And did I tell you, it is absolutely stunning. If you haven't been there, highly recommend you do so. With that, I'd like to ask Kevin Hall, President at the University of Victoria, to say a few words.
Well, thank you, Minister Rankin. Thank you, Premier Eby, for hosting us here today for this announcement. We're absolutely excited to be here. I did want to start off by acknowledging land and language and acknowledge we're here on the homelands of Lekwungen-speaking peoples, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. I do that because at UVic, our new Indigenous plan and our institutional plan is really about driving reconciliation. And I wanted to put that context on the table because this housing project is an important part of that. Our newest student building is called Sanaka House. It was named for the village known as Cadbur Bay now, and which was traditionally used for camas harvesting, for trading, and cultural and spiritual practice. And the word Sanaka means snow patches, which was named after the snow that comes to Cadbur Bay. Our recent other student building is Chukni House, and that name was given to the territory that is now Oak Bay and the people who live there. These names were the result of a lot of work that went on between the university, the local Indigenous nations, elders, and knowledge and language keepers. And we sought guidance and put a lot of work and collaboration into a meaningful consultation to come up with these houses. And we're very grateful to have been given permission to use the names to represent the spaces that will help our young students grow and thrive in our society. The second part of the story is about what this is going to do for us. This is almost 800 housing units for students that come to UVic. It allows our students to live and learn on our main campus. It allows them to be a short walk from the library and the classrooms. The continued government support for our students and for the experience they receive when they're at the University of Victoria. We would just really thank this government for providing that support, not only through the housing, but through the funding that's given to higher education in this province. So together, Chuckneen and Snucka House are providing a campus with also a 600-person dining room, two 225-seat classrooms, and an Indigenous student lounge. And so that's a fantastic place, and when you go into these buildings, you just feel the vibrancy of these buildings, you feel the excitement of these central spaces that have been created for our students, staff, and faculty. So we want to thank the government for the wonderful support in making Chuckneen and Snucka House a reality. And I think especially with the new labour market outlook and that trend that we're looking at that shows 75% of future jobs are going to require some form of post-secondary education and training, this housing really puts us in a good place to bring good students into our university. So once again, we thank the government for the support. We want to be good partners with the government, and we will strive to continue to look at ways to work with your government to build a strong, resilient province for all of us to prosper in the future. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, President Hall. And at a personal, if I can just add a personal note, as Minister of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, I just want to say to you how much I appreciate your personal efforts that you've made in that direction. I'm very proud as a former UVic person as well at the direction that you're taking the campus. Thank you for that. With that, I'd like to call upon Amelia Illman, who I say is the Residence Education Community Leader in the French Living Learning Community in Snucka House. Amelia.
Salut tout le monde. I would like to thank my friend Murray for the very lovely introduction. I am in my third year now of studying political science here at UVic, and now my second year of working in residence. So hopefully I can offer you a little bit of my own perspective of what it's like to be working as a residence community leader in Snucka House. So what I can say is, just as a student out of province, having guaranteed housing that is secure and affordable is very important to me. And since the opening of Snucka, many doors for opportunities for students in their first year and in their upper years are now available. I would also like to mention the addition of some wonderful new programming spaces as well in our building, with the addition of the Indigenous Student Lounge, which is led by a wonderful team of advisors, and also now kitchen facilities as well, so students can cook in residence, has been absolutely amazing. So yeah, and it never hurts as well to be within 10 minutes of a walk to your classes. So that is certainly great as well. I'd like to thank you for having me, and thanking my colleagues as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Amelia, and thanks for sharing a little bit about your experience there so far. I just want to say for myself how thrilled I am with this initiative. About a week and a half ago, I had an opportunity to go and tour, and I certainly encourage all of you to see the vibrancy and how excited the students are. I think President Hall alluded to that as well. It's really quite spectacular. I see my colleague Grace Lohr, MLA for Victoria Beacon Hill here, and she and I've also seen it when it was under construction, and now to see what it looks like inside, it's wow. The Snucka House has, I want to get the numbers right, 385 single-room dormitory stall beds, and it has 225-seat classrooms, and as Amelia said, an Indigenous student lounge. The elders from Songhees and Esquimalt have guided the project from the inception so that there's an Indigenous design that's, the elements are obvious. Anyone to go through it will notice that. And I think importantly, it makes sure that there's culturally safe places for Indigenous students, very important to attract them to the University of Victoria. I want to say to all of you, thank you. Thank you for gathering with us today. This is an extraordinarily happy day and a celebration for not only our government, but for the University of Victoria. Now I'd like to turn it over to Rick to moderate the media portion of this event.
Thanks for joining us today. We're going to invite the Premier back to the podium. There are members of the media here in person. We'll take questions from them as they continue to arrive. And we're going to start with Richard says Global News. Just before that, reminder for one question and one follow-up. Go ahead, Richard.
Here's a UVic fun fact. Minister Rankin taught my mom law at the University of Victoria, undisclosed number of years ago.
Great student.
She's a great mom too, Minister. For you, Premier, homeless advocates in Vancouver are calling for a moratorium on the ban of sleeping in parks through the winter because they don't believe there are enough shelter spaces for people to go inside. Would the province consider this ask to ensure that people have a safe, warm place to stay this winter?
It's essential for people to be able to get inside this winter. It's already cold out, and our government is working hard to open up emergency cold, wet weather shelter spaces across the province. And I'll be blunt, in some cities it's been easier than others, and I encourage all municipal leaders to work with us. The funding is there, the commitment is there to open these spaces, and the need is certainly there in communities across the province. Encampments, people sleeping outside, and tents, especially during the winter, is a last resort. There's a constitutionally recognized right of people when their shelter spaces aren't available to be able to set up a tent in a park. That is not what we want. We want people to be inside in a shelter with supports and the opportunity to go from the shelter into housing that we're building as well. So that's where our focus is. We recognize the rights of people when shelters aren't available to be able to sleep in parks, and in Victoria here there are designated parks. But our preference is really to work with the cities to open up the shelter space that we need.
Richard, do you have a follow-up question?
A year ago, people in Metro Vancouver felt winter chaos. There were hour-long waits. What has this government learned from what happened last year during the snowstorm that have improved the conditions in Metro Vancouver if we have another event like that?
Yeah, the Ministry of Transportation did a review following last year's storms to make sure that we were working as best as possible to ensure that people are able to get from point A to point B safely regardless of weather conditions. And Minister Fleming, I understand, will be available later today. He can provide more detail about that, but that is our commitment to British Columbians, and we're going to continue to do that work.
Our next question will come from Emily Vance from CBC News. Go ahead, Emily.
Thanks. My question is for anyone here who could answer this. Could you tell us how much one of these units would cost a student, maybe per month?
Do you know that? Here, come on up.
I can't give you the monthly. Students come typically for 2 semesters. It's about a $7,000 charge. And we've actually benchmarked this to other universities in the province. We're doing a very good service for our students by having quite a good rate. So.
Emily, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, my next question is for the Premier. Premier Eby, what do you say to concerns from the BC Green Party and other parties that sessions are lasting too long, there's not enough transparency when debating legislation, and they're concerned about their ability to meaningfully comment on the significant number of bills in front of the House before the end of the session?
So the practice in British Columbia for many years was not to have a fall session. We have had significantly more sitting days. We're trying to recognize the reality of our legislative assembly as it stands right now, which is that we have not the traditional 2 parties, not the traditional 3 parties. We actually have 4 parties in the legislative assembly right now, plus an independent, all of whom have the right and the need and to ask questions about legislation. This has required additional time. To respond to that, the House Leader has set out extended sitting days. We've been sitting till 9 o'clock at night to ensure that people are able to canvass legislation in detail. And it is an important role for opposition parties to be able to do that. It was something that I did for 4 years, and I thought it was important work, and it was. And so certainly it's something that we support. I met with the Green Party leader this morning, and she reminded me of her interest in more time and more opportunity to canvass these bills. So we'll continue to look for ways that we can improve the way this place operates to provide opportunities for opposition parties to not just examine government bills, but also to bring forward their own proposals as well.
Our next question will come from Rob Shaw from Czech News. Go ahead, Rob.
Premier, your homelessness bill, the shelter definition bill, the Union of BC Indian Chiefs has released a letter calling on you to withdraw it. there was debate in the legislature yesterday about whether you should take this bill out and not pass it. You've talked about putting in this cabinet provision to enact it, but if you pass it and there are legitimate concerns, you can't change it. So what is the point of the path that you're on this bill, and why not just sort of take it out until the spring?
Sure. So this particular bill it responds to a really serious challenge in our communities. We have, like many provinces across Canada, seen an increase in the number of people sleeping outside and also in encampments. A significant number of people grouped together, living together outside. One of the challenges we've run into is inconsistent decisions from courts about what the standard is that a local government has to meet to be able to decamp. What is the level of shelter that's required? Do individuals need to be, and to what degree, do their individual needs need to be accommodated? And that inconsistent standard has resulted in, for example, in the case of Crab Park, City of Vancouver Park Board going to court, trying to get an injunction to address the encampment, and then the resolution being that the encampment just stays there. And so this initiative is really about establishing the standard, because we've also had issues in communities like Prince George, where the City Council moved ahead to decamp an encampment, to move people out without ensuring that there were adequate shelter beds in place for people to be able to go to. And I don't think there's anyone in this province that supports the idea of moving someone out of an encampment to another encampment. It doesn't solve the problem, it doesn't make anything better. And so we need to ensure that cities meet a minimum standard before removing an encampment that recognizes people's human rights. So the goal of this bill is to set out that minimum standard. Here is the standard you need to hit. So on the one side now, we have the Union of BC Municipalities that says it makes it impossible to remove encampments if this passes. On the other side, we have housing advocates saying the complete opposite. And I met with the, just by way of example, the federal housing advocate this morning. This is difficult work. This is not something that we go into with a sense of excitement. This is something that has to be done. We don't want to end up in the situation of Oregon and California, of expanding city-sized encampments that cannot be addressed. And at the same time, we want to ensure that we're recognizing the basic human rights and dignity of people who are sleeping outside through no fault of their own. And so we will continue to do this work. Having the legislation in place, but not brought into force except by order in council, gives us the opportunity to go back to these stakeholders to talk through what are their concerns. I met with the federal housing advocate this morning to talk about her concerns. She'd written to us. We'll be meeting with UBCM. We'll be meeting with the First Nations Leadership Council. If we can't address the concerns, then we won't bring the bill into force. But if we can, if there's a path forward, we'll bring it into force, and it will be a tool that would be available to protect the human rights of people who are sleeping outside this winter, but also to give municipalities a clear path to, when they're making offers of shelter to people and they're refusing to leave for their own safety, to get that injunction to be able to address the encampment in the park. It is a critical piece of our housing strategy that people understand what their obligations are in terms of governments, and we're respecting people's human rights, but also that when we're funding high quality, good options where people can go into shelter, get meals, and then transition into permanent housing, that those are taken up as well.
And Rob, do you have a follow-up question?
The head of Canada's Navy yesterday put out a video saying that the Navy is so underfunded, understaffed, under-resourced, it's in a critical state and it can't meet its basic requirements in British Columbia next year on the West Coast. Does that worry you at all? Have you heard anything from the Prime Minister about this? And does it matter to British Columbians that the Navy can't meet its basic requirements here in this province? So from British Columbia's perspective, the protection of our West Coast and the role of the Navy in particular is critical. So there's obviously the defense aspect of our West Coast, making sure that that from a military point of view, that Canada is safe and protected. We're exercising our sovereignty in international waters. But the Navy also plays a critical role around issues of drug smuggling, illegal fishing, human trafficking,
important work that they do in partnership with the United States and that British Columbians expect them to do. And so I'm certainly concerned to hear that the Navy may not be able to fulfill those basic expectations that all British Columbians have. For example, when you talk about our salmon fishery, the ability of foreign trawlers to be able to fish with impunity in British Columbia waters, decimating our salmon stocks is a concern to every single British Columbian. And the ability of the Coast Guard and the Navy and others to be able to ensure that the rule of law is respected in Canada's territorial waters is critically important to so many different industries and to respect for nature here in British Columbia. So certainly encourage the federal government to have a look at those concerns, and this is the first time hearing of it.
Our next question will come from Katie DeRosa from Vancouver Sun. Go ahead, Katie.
Premier, we've been hearing from cancer patients, one who went to the U.S. and paid $200,000 out of pocket for a treatment that she said could not be done here, but that surgery saved her life. Another who was a dual U.S. citizen and was able to get that covered. What do you say to cancer patients who are saying that even with the Bellingham option, they're still facing unacceptable wait times?
Well, the need for everybody who faces a cancer diagnosis to be able to get the care that they need right away within the windows of time that are established by scientific evidence about maximizing their possibility of recovery and defeating cancer. It's absolutely essential. I don't care who you are in this province, and if you have a family member or someone close to you is facing a cancer diagnosis, or you do yourself, that's basic. And so we have dedicated significant additional resources to meet the increasing demand we have around cancer diagnosis going up in this province. We have an aging population. We're seeing a record number of cancer diagnoses in this province. At the same time, we are competing with other jurisdictions across Canada for oncologists, for radiation technologists. We've increased the salaries for those critical roles. We've been able to turn the tide and recruit a significant number of those professionals into our cancer teams here to respond and reduce wait times. To take the pressure off, we've expanded into the United States. We've retained a firm in Bellingham to be able to deliver cancer care to people so that folks don't have to wait. I'm advised that the recent data we have is that 49 of the 50 spaces that we have contracted for in Bellingham are currently being used. And I understand it's not going to work for everybody, but we need to give people options. And so we're going to respond to this the same way that we have to the other challenges we face in our healthcare system, through our human resources strategy, through the new cancer treatment centers in Nanaimo and Kamloops, by ensuring we're competitive with other jurisdictions across Canada for these professionals, and making sure that we have the facilities and the staff that we need to be able to deliver that care.
And Katie, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes. Have you received any Canadian intelligence about the arrest of the alleged hitman who was contracted to take out a hit on the U.S. New York-based lawyer who is colleagues with Sikh leader here in Nijar, and that his assassination was also discussed? Again, links to the Indian government in that. What kind of briefing have you been given, and what can you tell us?
Thanks. I haven't received any information beyond what I've been able to read in the media about these developments out of the United States and the indictment that's been filed there. The federal government, I'll say to their credit, has made an effort to be able to provide what information they can to me through existing channels. But unfortunately, the CSIS Act restricts CSIS's ability to share information with the provincial government. And the reason this is important is pretty straightforward. British Columbians, and especially currently those in the Indian expat community, need to be safe. If there is information, incredible information, that there's a threat to their lives from a foreign government that wants them dead in Canada, then the province having that information, being able to respond as well in partnership with the federal government is critically important. The federal government has started an engagement about reforms to the CSIS Act to make the changes to be able to share that information so we can keep British Columbians safe. I hope that it happens quickly. I hope that those changes are implemented quickly at the federal level so that we can get that information that we need to make sure the British Columbians are safe.
Our next question will come from Amelia McCower from Radio Canada. Go ahead, Amelia.
Thank you for taking my question. I will first ask about a follow-up from my colleague and then the housing announcement. So BC United and the Green Party are saying that it's not democratic because basically the NDP is choosing how much time is spent on debating in which bill. I just wanted to hear you on that.
So we have a fixed amount of time in the legislature to be able to get through a significant amount of work. We traditionally have been able to work with the opposition parties in allocating time for different bills and do things in a cooperative way. I would say that it has become significantly more challenging with 3 opposition parties and an independent member to be able to do the planning to provide more predictability around each bill and the amount of time that is required to get through each bill. I think that as we move forward and each party and the House Leader deepen those relationships, we'll be able to be a little bit more predictable in that work together. But right now it has been a challenge, and I accept that it's been a challenge. We've extended the hours that we sit and debate these bills to sit for almost 12-hour days of debate and discussion on these important initiatives. But I'll also say, British Columbians can't wait. These are initiatives related to housing, the crisis that we face right now in housing, and we feel a sense of urgency around these reforms as well. So we're trying to find that balance. There's a lot of moving parts here in the legislature these days with all the different parties, and we're going to continue to do that work. And I accept the critique that we can always do better, and there's always an opportunity for us to provide more debate, more committee work, and opportunities for members in opposition that do important work to be able to raise concerns and do the work that their constituents sent them here to do.
Amelia, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, it would be in French, if that's okay, pour Amelia et pour le ministre Rankin. Amelia, juste nous expliquer peut-être l'importance d'avoir un logement quand on est étudiant, surtout proche du campus. Et peut-être le ministre, si vous pouvez nous expliquer l'importance d'avoir justement un lounge autochtone et plus d'implication en fait des Premières Nations.
Merci pour la question, Emilia. Je pense que c'est important d'avoir du logement pour les Françaises parce qu'on a des francophones qui est ici à l'Université de Victoria qui étudient et il y a une importance d'avoir un sens de communauté. D'abord, de Maroc, je suis, c'est très avantageuse pour moi pour travailler ce job. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Juste pour ajouter, en ce qui concerne la réconciliation, j'espère qu'il faut avoir un lieu pour les étudiants des peuples autochtones qui habitent à Victoria, d'avoir un lieu où on peut être sauf et sauvegardé. Et j'espère que ça fait partie de ce qu'on fait dans ce nouveau logement. Et aussi, deuxièmement, ça libère le reste de la communauté pour le logement. Ça veut dire que c'est plus facile de trouver un endroit à louer à Victoria, à Saanich et toute la région. Et ça c'est l'autre élément. Je veux plus mettre l'accent sur le logement général dans notre communauté.
Next question comes from Andrew McLeod from the Tyee. Go ahead, Andrew, for your question.
Yeah. Hi, Premier. I'm hoping for an explanation regarding the apology to the Doukhobors that you didn't make yesterday. And specifically, this is something you've been talking about since 2018. It's something the government said 4 months ago would happen in the fall. It's become clear it's not going to happen in the fall. And I'm wondering why people weren't involved, why they weren't consulted sooner and given a date sooner.
Yeah, I would say this is an example of government with all good intentions, wanting to get work done, wanting to move forward, and losing track of making sure that that it's done right. So the plan was yesterday that we would do an apology and recognition of the impacts faced by Doukhobor children in particular in our legislative assembly. It became quite clear to me that there hadn't been opportunity for survivors or family members to come to Victoria to make travel arrangements to be able to witness this, and that we weren't able to offer for those that are too sick or elderly or not able through disability to be able to attend Victoria, opportunities in Grand Forks or in Castlegar for people to gather and observe. When we do this work, and examples are the apology to the Japanese community, we need to do it right. And it is something that we pointed out under the previous administration, is something that can be done in a way that actually deepens the harm rather than recognizes and begins the work of building trust. I made the decision that we would take the time to make sure that the community could be physically here, that they could be part of the recognition of their own mistreatment by the provincial government, knowing that some people had expectations that it would happen this week and that they may be disappointed as a community that already has trust issues with government. But I just felt that the need for them to be physically present if they could be, and the need for us to accommodate people in local communities was just too important to not say, let's regroup, let's make the right decision, let's do this properly.
Andrew, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I think lots of people in the community agree with that. I mean, we're talking about 80-year-olds in the Kootenays who want to be here. The apology was to happen Tuesday morning. You invited them on the Monday. There was 4 months before that. Like, what? I'm not really understanding who dropped the ball or why things weren't in line for a proper apology yesterday.
Well, I'll take responsibility. This is an initiative out of the Premier's office. And it should have been done, and it wasn't done. And for anyone that caused difficulty for, I want to apologize to them. I made a number of calls last night to clarify why we were deferring this to a date when people were able to attend. And I understand people's disappointment about that. And just a commitment that we're going to do things right. And sometimes that means recognizing when you're screwing up. And this was one of those occasions.
Next question, we're going to go to Wolf Deppner from Black Press. Go ahead, Wolf.
Yeah, thank you, Premier, for taking my question. Question regarding the public accounts that came out yesterday. They showed that BC exports are down 16% year to year over the first 9 months of this year. How concerned are you that the trade winds are blowing in the face of BC at this stage?
Yeah, I think trade data is something that we've been proud of. We've seen an increase of 41% in our exports since forming government. But recently, with the downturn in the global economy, rising interest rates, we are seeing the softening of demand for major exports from British Columbia. We've also seen commodities exported from British Columbia at a lower global price, which means that our exports are at the same level, but they're not commanding the same price globally as they were before, and so it appears as though exports are lowered when actually just the value of the same number of exports is down. Our goal around trade is pretty straightforward. Diversifying the countries that we trade with. We've opened new trade offices in Vietnam and the Philippines and in Taiwan to increase our trading partners. Today's news out of India is just one more reminder of how vulnerable our international relationships can be. We're a small trade-dependent jurisdiction. Canada's relationship with the rest of the world has a disproportionate impact on British Columbia. Tensions between the US and China and Canada and India have impacts on trade for us. And so it's critical that we have a diverse number of clients and customers, that BC businesses are supported in finding customers and clients in other parts of the world, and that we have an array of industries that are exporting as well. So we're continuing our work around that, and we are seeing some of the impacts of a slowing global economy right here in British Columbia.
And Wolf, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you. I'm not expecting you to announce your budget here today, but what, if any, headline or what, if any, lesson are you taking away from the public accounts that could impact what the budget is going to look like in February of next year?
Well, one of the challenges that we have in the budgeting exercise is understanding what our revenues are in the province, and that's because we're very dependent on Revenue Canada to provide us with data. We're still getting data from Revenue Canada about the 2022 tax year that are being reflected in our updates. It makes it challenging to know the actual fiscal position of the province. But despite those challenges, we know around the province the key challenges faced by people. We know that people are struggling with affordability generally, and particularly in relationship to housing. We know that our healthcare system needs support to ensure that healthcare is there for people when they need it. And we also know that we need to continue to build our economy, and we need to continue to ensure safe and strong communities across the province. None of these things will be surprises to anyone here. These are all areas of focus and priority that we've talked about, that I've been talking about since being sworn in as Premier. We're going to continue that focus, whether it's in the budget or otherwise as government. And as for the impact of rising interest rates, the slowing global economy, issues around rising costs of the materials for our capital projects and so on, things shift quite dramatically in the economy globally right now, and so the finance minister is definitely being kept on her toes.
Our next question will come from Fran Yanner from Northern Beat. Go ahead, Fran.
Hi, Premier. Just to follow up on the encampment amendments, just forgive me, I'm trying to understand, because I understand that some previously they have gotten to that stage, third reading, and then they can potentially sit in limbo for a while. And this is a very complicated situation, as you obviously know. I'm just wondering, what's the capacity to make changes at that point after it's been through third reading, and then there's no ability to debate it after? I'm just not clear on that.
Thanks, Fran. So just from a purely technical point of view, a bill comes into force either on royal assent or by order in council. Royal assent, the bills usually go through in a group at the end of the session. By order in council, there's no due date or no timeline on order in council bringing it into force. So, for example, when we were sworn into government, we brought into force a provision that had been passed by the Liberals almost a decade previously about privatization in the healthcare system. We brought it into force through order in council. That was a bill that had been passed, debated in the House, and then sat for many years before being brought into force by our government. So the bill can stay there. It can't be amended. It would have to come back to the legislature for further debate if there were changes that needed to be made. My hope is on this bill that people are looking at it, and if you're a housing advocate, you see a bill that somehow reduces people's human rights, even though it explicitly recognizes a right to dignified shelter in the province. And if you're a municipality, you look at it and you say, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to remove an encampment again. And so somewhere between these perspectives is the actual impact of the bill. So our hope is that by meeting with the different advocates, whether for municipalities or First Nations or housing advocates, that we're able to help people understand the intent of the bill, have a discussion about whether it achieves that intent, and really narrow down what our points of difference are.
And Fran, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes. I guess I'm just wondering if you then change it based on all these consultations and feedback, is there an opportunity for debate on that, or like?
Yes. The short answer is we cannot change it unless it comes back to the Legislative Assembly for the full bill process.
We have time for one more question.
Happy to talk to you after.
Go to Mary Brooke from Island Social Trend. Go ahead, Mary.
Hi. I'm looking at the housing shortage for students in Victoria. You've just taken care of that with UVic. Camosun has.
I wish.
Yeah,
there's more to do.
Relatively. But Camosun has, several thousand students as well that would need housing. Is that the next tranche of what you're going to do about student housing? And that would free up more housing for the local community as well.
Thanks. Yeah. I know Camosun and many other post-secondary institutions in the province have proposals around housing. We're keen to work with them. I know UVic has more proposals around housing that they want to bring forward. I think it's safe to say that there is huge demand for student housing right now in the province. Our government, by increasing our own goals from 8,000 to 12,000 units of student housing, additional resources for universities and colleges to be able to access for that, we're opening opportunities for schools like Camosun and other universities to be able to advance those proposals with us. We are keen to have schools develop more housing, including schools that haven't had housing before and are building their housing program from scratch.
Do you have a follow-up, Mary?
This might seem like a broad question, but do you feel that with all the new housing legislation, you've done enough for renters? And where I'm going with that as well is that even with all the good initiatives that you've brought in, it will take time for some of these spaces to liberate. And as people are let go from their rental accommodation, where do they go? There's going to be a short-term crisis.
Yeah. There's no question that people are struggling to find the housing they need right now, which is why we've really focused on where can we find housing that's available right now that can be opened right away. So, our changes around the strata rules, for example, that prohibited rental prohibitions, required stratas to permit people to rent out their units is one example of that. The short-term rental initiative, which, by the way, I got a letter day before yesterday from someone who has just moved into a place that he says was previously a short-term rental. It's a fully furnished apartment. It's a four units in a house. Went from 3, the owner lived in 1. There were 3 Airbnb units. Now the owner lives in 1. There's 1 Airbnb unit and there are 2 rental units. He rented one of them. So we're already seeing the impacts of the short-term rental legislation. And with that said, we know we've got more to do. We are seeing some landlords misusing what's called landlord use provision, where they evict somebody for landlord use and then bring in a new tenant at a higher rent. We know that's an area that requires attention. We also are hearing from landlords and people who want to be landlords who are concerned about tenants who choose not to pay rent or who cause significant damage or involved in criminal activity in the unit. These are all areas that we are looking at because we want more people to become landlords, and we also want to make sure that tenants that are benefiting from the carefully thought out rent controls we do have in the province, that they're not evicted for improper reasons. So there's more work to do, absolutely, and we are working on it.
And that's all the time we have today. Thanks to everyone for joining us.
Thank you.